Hello everyone. Welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we were working with the Deadly Decoy Hunter. Oh, Sublime Text, you're early. We were working with the Deadly Decoy Hunter plugin that's under development, and we added first some debugging features to make it a little bit easier to develop, and we also added in the ability to move the window. This time, what I'd like to do is finish up what we think are necessary minimum version 1 things before we can push this out the door. So specifically, I think I want to clean up the code a little bit, definitely add in the ability to save settings to file and load them back, and maybe even support localization right out of the gate. So as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. But first, let's review what the Deadly Decoy plugin can do. So here we have my trusty hunter Arda on the server Treebeard, just looking out over the fields west of Bree into the Barrow Downs, looking at the ruins of that tower kind of shadowing over the town. That's kind of gloomy feeling. I'm just going to turn around. Okay, that's much better. Look at that lovely fountain. Very cheerful. Okay, so Arda is a hunter. Arda is a hunter that has specialized in the yellow line Trapper of Foes, which starts off giving you a decoy, and once you spend 5 trait points in yellow, that upgrades to a deadly decoy. Now, the difference between them, a decoy lasts for 1 minute, deadly decoy lasts for 15 seconds, and if the deadly decoy is still alive after 15 seconds, it blows up, dealing damage and stunning opponents. Neat. So, all thing we wanted to know was, well, when is it going to explode and how much health does it have? So we can see here that the decoy is out and the plugin is counting down the time. And as we approach 15 seconds, poof, excellent. Now, we don't have any enemies here up above the fountain in Bree, but if we go into our Hunter Deadly Decoy options, we can see that one of the options that we gave ourselves, one of the debug options, was to pretend like the decoy is taking damage. Now, in this case, let's say it's taking 500 damage each time. We can go ahead and summon out, and then go ahead and damage. And we can see the health bar is also going down. If the plugin detects more damage than the health of the decoy, it goes ahead and just hides that. Although in this case, of course, that was fake damage. The decoy was still there. And we don't even need to be able to deploy the decoy. What if we want to test this and we're not a yellow line hunter? Well, we have these buttons. We can go ahead and deploy the dummy decoy, which lasts for 1 minute. We can set its ticking very slowly down. Or the deadly decoy, which takes much faster. And either way, we can go ahead and act as if we're damaging it. That's fine. Cool. So that's where we left off. The one last thing we did last time was add in the ability to move this window around. Now, I'm not entirely happy with how we implemented that. If the decoy happens to be out during combat, it kind of gets in the way of that. But for version 1, I think it's fine. In a future version, I'd like to refine it so we can move, unlocking it just either shows it if it's not shown, or if it is shown, just lets us move it around. I think that'd be a much nicer, but it's probably like a version 1.2 kind of improvement. Because right now, we can move that around, we can lock it, great. Next time we summon out the decoy, perfect. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, let's go ahead and look back at our to-do items. Tell you what, we should go ahead and share that window again. Let's see, how about that one? There we go. Oh, why doesn't my plugin along? Oh, there we go. Okay, so here we are in the to-do file, and something I forgot to do last time was take a snapshot of current state of code using source control. Now, if you've tuned in before, you know I'm a big proponent of source control, even for something small like this little plugin right here. So, what does that look like? let's go ahead and pop up my source control program of choice. This is called Fork, and it understands both Git repositories and external tools like Beyond Compare, and it's pretty cool. Okay, here we go. Okay, are you going to be happy? Are you going to load? Excellent. So we're going to ignore the D tracker stuff. It's a work in progress. And come here and just look at the 100 Deadly Decoy. And this is how we left it off last week. Okay, so we have changes to the to-do file. Those don't matter too much. We'll go ahead and commit them though. What were we doing before? We added the ability to move the window, and by doing that, we changed where the set mouse visible to false was happening. Let's see. This is all of that, and in the main, we went ahead and added the draw options control. So we're going to need this. Stage that line. Let's see. Let's go ahead and stage that too while we're at it. And finally, the draw options control. Now, we don't need those debug options yet. We'll do those in a separate commit. And finally, we did do some refactoring for main. We'll go ahead and grab those. Awesome. So that, oops. Yeah, we can go ahead and add that too. That's sort of our first snapshot of what we did last time. The other thing we did was add debug options. And that was a really cool ability. So we want to go ahead and commit that there. No, don't show me dtracker. Add a debug options. Cool. And by separating out the snapshots into two pieces like that, it's going to be a little bit easier if I need to figure out what does it look like to be able to move a window, or what debug options did I add, or if I need to revert some of those changes, but I don't want to wipe away everything that I did. That can be really useful. We'll go ahead and push those to the server so they're not only on my computer. And that's the other really great thing about source control is now it's both on my machine and somewhere else. So if I drop my laptop in the river, we're good. We have a backup. It's not really a river, it's a water feature behind the house, but it'll still damage the laptop. Okay, so that was to-do item number 1. Let's go ahead and take a snapshot before we start doing stuff. So I haven't actually taken a look here. What were some of the top items that I mentioned? Support translation. If someone else wants to use this in French or German or Russian, we would love that to happen. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, that one seems like a nice one to have too. And we said save/load settings. And finally, maybe reorganize. Whoops, reorganize the code, question mark? We'll put that at the bottom. I can ship with the code being messy. But I would like to get something out there so that anyone who's got a hunter who wants to try this out can start using it, give feedback on the parts that are good and the parts that are not good. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really useful about writing plugins is taking advantage of work you've already done. And so off to the side here, I can go ahead and pull up something from a few months ago, actually, where we were working with the opaque quest tracker. And we did some of the same things here, where we had localization, where we had save files. And so we're going to lift some of the same ideas there. Now, if you're writing multiple plugins, you might have a central library that contains some of these features. But if you're only doing 1 or 2 plugins, or you don't write them very often, or you write a plugin here for LOTRO and a plugin there for World of Warcraft and a plugin here for Factorio, there's less sharing that you can do there, maybe. Depends on how each of those systems works. So I don't feel bad about copy pasting here. The code that we're copying is simple enough, But the problem is if I discover a bug in one of them, kind of by definition, that bug is now in each of the plugins that I've copied that into. Whereas if it had been in a central place, maybe I could fix it in one place, and each of the plugins could benefit from that. Now, managing that can be a little bit complicated. What you'll sometimes see in plugins that use libraries like that is they'll have cool feature 1.lua, and then they'll come out with a new version of it, and it'll be cool feature 2.lua. And they do this for backwards compatibility because you don't want to break someone's plugin if they're still expecting the old version of that central library code. So being self-contained in a project has its own problems of making sure it's updated. Oh, that bug over there, I have to fix it over here. But a self-contained plugin does have the advantage of it. It's probably going to work regardless of who is installing it where. So there are trade-offs. Okay, let's get to it. The first thing I see in here is some language stuff and the localization, and that seems great. Hoisting out those strings to translate can be a pretty fast thing. So let's go ahead and look at that. So we haven't done the code reorganization yet. If we were doing that, maybe we could put these in a file called strings. Maybe we could do that right now. So if I go ahead and save this as strings.lua, and don't remember, we do need to go ahead and load it in. Let's see. I'm just doing these alphabetically. So copy that previous path, but then go ahead and just call it strings. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it resource if you wanted it to mimic Visual Studio. That's an arbitrary name for a file there. Lua and LOTRO don't care. Okay, so in strings, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to set some constants here equal to turbine.language.something. Now, what is this? Well, I'm glad you asked that, hypothetical me. In the API documentation, if we come on into the turbine namespace, there's a language enumeration. And in this, there's English and German and French. Now, there are a couple entries, one for Great Britain English and also one for Russian. The officially supported ones are currently English, French, and German, but that doesn't mean there aren't players out there desperately trying to play this with Russian. But right now I'm just going to focus on the 3 officially supported languages. Easy enough to add in other languages later if that's desirable. Oh hey, here's another language thing. Let's go ahead and get the client's current language. Now you can't change your language while you're in the game. You have to be at the launcher and use this menu right here to change to a different language. The launcher will relaunch under that language, and then you can launch the client from there. So you can be guaranteed that whatever value you get from get language will not change, because in order to change, the plugin has to be unloaded and the client has to go away. So this is a constant value and can't change. That's cool. We can just save that off then. All right. What else do we see about language? Let's go ahead and declare a lang table here. And in this, we're going to be including our own strings from this plugin. So this is where we're going to be customizing. Now we could actually go ahead and steal the loaded and unloaded strings here. Let's see, plugin description. We actually do have plugin description over here. I'm going to hoist that out into the strings file. Make sure it's declared here. Excellent. Okay, and then plugin name. We should probably grab that too. Plugin version 2. We'll grab them all. Excellent. So we actually have the start of the current main file has a lot of the text that we're using to identify when combat stuff happens. And so these are probably going to need to go straight into our localized file. So let's go ahead and start with decoy deploy. So we'll need a section decoy. And you get to decide what these sections are, how they kind of package different parts of your plugin together. So this is, again, all arbitrary and up to you. But I'm gonna think of any of the messages related to the decoy itself is just gonna go under here. And decoy deploy. I'll need to spell it correctly. Now remember, for each translated integer we have here, we can go ahead and define a string. And the function that we're going to bring in from the opaque quest tracker will fall back to English if you don't have another one. Now in this case, that's terrible because this is definitely not going to be correct for French or German. But it does mean there'll at least be some definitive answer and you won't get a crash in the middle of running. So there's a trade-off there. Okay. Let's see. Oh. Decoy deploy deadly, or decoy, and we also need a deploy deadly decoy. Okay, and we can bring that in. Now, what I had before were examples that we were trying to match, and I think that's very useful to have because it can be kind of tedious to go out and gather those. So let's go ahead and just grab those and include them right here. Oops, I already had a comment. Awesome. Okay, so now we need to actually use them because these are still being used somewhere in code. In those two places, actually. So the one other thing we need is we need this get string format. Function. And again, this is where that problem is. We're going to copy paste it over here. If it turns out we wrote it wrong or can improve it, we're going to have to remember to come back to each plugin and update it that way. But regardless, here we go. Here's a get string. So we pass in the table. We're calling it text here, but it should probably be table. And then we are checking if it's nil or if the current client language is nil, or sorry, not nil, then we'll go ahead and return that. Otherwise, we'll try to return the English version of it. Okay, the English one's always going to be there because I'm developing in English, so that's a pretty safe fallback for me. So what else do we need? We need to go ahead and do a decoy dot deploy decoy. Okay. So this is being used here. And so what we actually need is get string of lang dot decoy deploy decoy. Maybe. Let's go make sure that that's how this is getting used. Lang status unloaded. Great. That looks awesome. Lang status loaded, unloaded. Awesome. Okay. And then same thing over here. We want to go ahead and use get string. But remember that this is the deadly decoy. So we're going to want to use that one instead. Awesome. So we should no longer be using these untranslated strings anymore. We can just get rid of them. And that's part of this down. So the next thing, and conveniently, I just put these all at the top of the file. The next one is the decoy being defeated. Very sad. So decoy defeated. Now this is the same message regardless of whether it's a decoy or a deadly decoy, because this dot star is matching optional stuff there. So there could be master trapper's decoy, master trapper's deadly decoy. It all gets gobbled up by the dot star. All right, so we're going to go ahead and bring that in here. Excellent. And then we need this. Fortunately, we can just nab this right here and get the lang decoy defeated get string call. And we then get to ask, was that the only one? It does look like that was the only one. So we can go ahead and take the documentation here and put it into place here instead. Whoops. All right. Now, there are numerous ways to do localization. This is just a way, but it's a convenient way to allow someone else to come in and have a single place that they can come and be entering the German values or the French values. Or if they send it to you as the plugin developer, you can go ahead and find a single place to put them in. Oh, let's see. Now, we were wondering if being self-defeated meant something, and I think the answer is if you're defeated, your decoy goes away after a few seconds. And when that happens, I don't think we get a combat message. It just fades away. But we didn't actually go down that road. So I think it's okay to go ahead and get rid of that. And if we want to add that refinement where if we're incapacitated, then we start maybe a 2-second timer and then make the decoy go away. Because I've definitely seen that if I go down, if it's fast enough, the decoy can still explode and do damage. But if it takes too long, it loses its tether to the world, as it were. Okay, so the finally is the decoy is taking damage. You know, conceptually, I think that goes before being defeated. So we'll go ahead and, what's it say? It doesn't say much. Decoy take damage. All right, take damage. Nope, I would say damaged. I'm going to avoid having be a compound. All right, and then the English one is defined as, all right, scored some type of hit on the decoy. Sometimes it'll be a critical, sometimes it'll be a glancing blow. We don't really care. All we care about is the damage. Okay, and we get the numbers here. Now, a thing that's going to matter, perhaps, for a localizer is that in the French and the German, the thousands separator is probably not a comma. It's probably a period, maybe. I haven't tried that out. And so by including the pattern match here in this string, it can be adapted by them for whatever their numbers are coming in as. Okay, so we can use the same copy-paste cheat here for the decoy take damage, but of course we know it is the damaged, not the deployed string that we're going for here. I am not AFK. The game is wrong. Kind of. Okay, so that was the damage. Awesome. Let's go ahead and move these documentation, kind of, over here. Awesome. And then we'll know the various types of things that we're trying to match against in the future. So parried hit, evaded hit, swipe attack, these should all register in some way, or not register in the case of this one. If the decoy evades, we should see 0 damage come through. Awesome. Okay. So something that I want to come back to before we ship this thing is right now, every time the target changes, we print out its health, which is very handy if you're trying to figure out how much health, say, this decoy has. Click it, we can see target change, target's health, 2670, which is a level 50 decoy, we now know. Or rather, it's level 50 hunter's decoy. Awesome, and love it. Cool, so that seems useful to keep, but only for debugging purposes. So we're gonna circle back around to that. And in the meantime, since it's only debugging, I'm not worried about localizing it, because it's really only for me or to be sent to me. Okay, but we do need this decoy deploy message. Awesome. So we can go ahead and If we wanted to be cute, we could say deploy decoy and decoy deployed, that kind of thing. But, you know, I'm wondering if this is a little too vague. If decoy, since the whole plugin's about decoys, maybe we should call that decoy combat, because those are specifically combat messages. So let's go ahead and search for a .decoy dot, and we'll go ahead and change that to .decoy combat dot instead. Okay, so find that, replace, 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 replace. Cool. There were 4 of them here. Yeah, okay. So let's see. Let's call this plugin out, messages. Output messages. Naming things is hard. That's fine. We'll call it output messages. So decoy deployed. And that one is, you know, it was a silly little message that I put in here. You deployed a decoy, you awesome hunter, you. We don't have to change that right now. We can come back later and there'll be a single central place for that. So we can go ahead and say en equals that. But it is nice to confirm, perhaps, to the user that we have recognized it. But now that the actual decoy shows up, I'm not sure that's necessary. But I don't want to change too much functionality here yet. So we'll go ahead and, borrow this get string functionality here. You deployed a decoy. Awesome. So this is actually lang. Now, we know it's in output messages. And we know it's decoy deployed. And as you can see, I'm doing a lot of copy paste here. I'm not having to remember what all of those things are. Oh, I have a mismatched parentheses. Okay. Oh, yes, that was the decoy deployed. Now we need deadly. Oops. Deadly decoy deployed. Just in case we want to call out a difference between those. Now, of course, in English, we could just have a little flag, which is what type of decoy is it, decoy or deadly decoy. But knowing, as we do, that some other languages might separate those out based on how they're conjugating the sentence or something, we'll just leave the entire message as something that can be localized. Okay. We're going to do that same thing. We're going to call the getString function, but this time we want to do it on the deadly decoy deployed. Awesome. And then finally, oh no, your decoy is defeated. Decoy defeated. Now this is technically correct regardless of whether you're using a deadly decoy or not. If you wanted to be even fancier, we could have a different message for each way of it being defeated, but we don't need to worry about that right now. This plugin is already fancy enough. Okay, and that's going to be the decoy defeated message. Awesome. So we're moving really strongly here. Now, a way to kind of cheat is we're looking for strings, and in Lua, strings are surrounded by double quotes. So if we search for a double quote, all right, we found, Interesting. So a thing that was happening was we were pulling out, say, 1,400 from the text, and then telling Lua, okay, this is a number. And Lua said, no, it's not, because Lua doesn't like parsing numbers with commas in them if it thinks commas are for thousand separators. So this is a quick little way to remove that. But if thousand separators is different for a different language, we want to take that into account. So let's go ahead and in the combat section, go ahead and document that this is for that. So we're talking about damage thousands separator. I always feel like I'm misspelling separator. But the captioner agrees with me, so we'll go ahead and run with it. Oh, hopefully I have set it up correctly. So if you like having automated captions, hilarious though they can sometimes be, you should see a little CC button down in the bottom right of your Twitch window. Okay. It's being told to me that I may not, but it says it's on, so I'm just gonna hope. All right. Okay, so this, if I recall correctly, the percent was escaping the comma. We're just going to go ahead and leave that in here. Oops. And this will let us use the get string and instead we're in decoy combat, and that's the damage 1000 separator. And now anyone can specify a different one, or if they're also using commas, then we'll just default to English and that's fine. All right, let's go ahead and look for another. Oh, well, that's an empty string, that's fine. Oh, good. Here we are in the options screen. Lock the window in place. We definitely want to go ahead and localize that. And we can even start a new section. Options. Great. And in here, lock window. We can go ahead and specify the English version of that is this. Neat. Now, we want to go ahead and use a get string call, get string, and again, the core table is lang, and then we're in options, and underneath that, we are in lock window. Awesome. Well, let's do it again. Let's search for another quote. Okay, now here's another one of those. We're in the debug options section, so ideally this is only being seen by me or someone else who I've told to enable it. And so I don't feel like this needs to be localized because, excuse me, because ideally an end user isn't going to see it. Now you can make your own decision on that if you want these to be more accessible, just in case you want other people to be able to play around with them. You can totally hoist these up into the localization table, just like we've been doing with the other ones. And as we've seen, it's not hard to do, but you get to make that choice for internal kind of things that aren't for general distribution. Just remember to actually localize them if they go out for public consumption. Every once in a while in Lord of the Rings Online, you might see a DNT text, a do not translate text. You might see that on someone's induction, especially a monster's induction where they're doing some special ability, and it'll say D-not-T or DNT, whatever, close range attack. And the idea was that was supposed to be a placeholder that was not for translation because it wasn't the final text, and then it just kind of slipped on through and went out the door that way. Same thing with your plugin. If you don't translate something, just be aware of that for later if one of these things does go public. Okay, so that's all in the debug section, so we're good there. Oh, here we go. So the loaded plugin description, we've already gone ahead and status loaded. So if we do get string, this is lang status loaded. Awesome. Whoa, that's not going to be helpful. Okay. All of that. Okay, so we've hoisted all of the quotes on out of there. Now, we didn't do an unloaded. Oh, we haven't registered for unload yet, so that would be why. So, what do we do after we make a big change like that? Well, we should test it. So let's go ahead and first of all, unload the current plugin, and let's load and see if we broke anything. Okay, well, first of all, we got loaded Hunter Deadly Decoy version 1 by Cube. It's me! And we no longer have that text in main. That is being pulled from this right here, which is loaded, and the plugin description, which is plugin name and plugin version. All that's being put together automatically from the plugin description XML file. Awesome. Now, the neat thing about that is if we go ahead and in the 100 Deadly Decoy, if this is eventually version 17, we've done so many cool changes. We can see that LOTRO can pick up the change in the .plugin XML file, and when we load it, that is automatically fed into the plugin variable. We're getting the plugin name from plugin get name, plugin get version. This is a special variable available during plugin loading. And so we can ask LOTRO, hey, what is the version? So we don't have to hard code it in here, version 17, and then remember to change it each time we change our versions. Neat. Okay. Now this is not version 17, so I'm going to go ahead and revert that change. Oh, that's an interesting thing. So the version that was reported was the version that was cached in this view. And so when I loaded it, even though it was 100 in the file, I hadn't refreshed the view. And so the plugin still got 17 back from LOTRO. That's fascinating. I love seeing little edge cases like that. Okay, so that was localization, right? That didn't take us very long, maybe half an hour to go through, hoist out all of these strings that could be shown to an end user or that could be affected by an end user's choice of language, and put them all in one place. So if someone was trying to localize this to French or German, this is the only place they need to go. Right here, this section, and it's very straightforward how to add one, but even if they don't, it's very easy for you as a plugin developer to add them in yourself. Awesome. So, step 1, localize the plugin. Now what do? We go to our source control and remember to commit that. Okay, so that was just the changes we did in the to-do file, no biggie. And here's where we can see all the changes, and you know what? I wonder, would that be too chaotic? That's probably too much. Okay, so here we can see we're importing the strings file. We have moved a bunch of stuff into the strings file, and now we've changed a bunch of inline strings to the getString function. So decoy deployed, deadly decoy deployed. Oh, we didn't actually test to make sure that this thing, yay, it worked. We can go ahead and take 1,000 damage while we're at it. Now, that doesn't actually test the chat features. That bypasses chat, but it does make sure everything else still works. Awesome. Okay, back to fork. In fork, we can see that the rest of these were getString changes. Perfect, that's just what we want to see. And the strings file is brand new. And it's pretty obvious it has strings. Excellent. So this was localized the Deadly Decoy plugin. Awesome. So we've taken that snapshot. So that frees us up to continue making lots of changes. And if those changes go wrong, we can undo them without undoing everything we've done today. The localization, we have it. Fun. Well, what's the next thing? Well, the save and load settings is a big deal, but this one is so easy, fingers crossed. So let's go ahead and knock it out real fast. We only want this targeting info. when we're in debug mode. Now I am in debug mode, but we'll go back and forth to double check that. So we have a show debug options is true. Ideally, in a future version, there would be maybe a checkbox in here for show target health. And only if that's on in debug mode, so you have to kind of double opt in. But you know what? We don't have time for that today. Whoops. We're going to go ahead and just abide by this. So in the target changed, if not show debug options, then return end. So just abandon the target changed function because the rest of this is all debug stuff. We're not doing anything decoy related in here. Now, how do we test that? Well, first thing, we test it as it was. Let's see. Okay, everything's still happening. And then if we come on in here and set debug options to false, like I should have committed into the repo, I'm just realizing. Then when we come in here, we can see as my target's changing, none of that is coming out into chat. Let me come back in here and real fast. First of all, we're going to stage this one. Debug options should be off by default. And we'll go ahead and commit the actual change we were going for, which was don't print that when you're not in debug mode. Awesome. In fact, I'm just going to copy that to-do item to be my commit message. Okay, I see someone's popped into chat. Baz says, oh, interesting. Baz points out the target function is so bad for performance, I might not want to set it at all if I'm not going to use it. That's a really good point. There's no need to ask LOTRO to tell you every time your target changes, which for some of us is a lot, especially as a hunter, pew, tab, pew, tab, pew, tab, pew. So that's a really good point. Now, is Lua flexible enough for us to not do this, except in a function? So if we go ahead and say, if show debug options, then let's go ahead and indent that, and then end. So ideally, what we've just done is instead, if show debug options is on, then we'll go ahead and set the target changed callback function to be this. Otherwise, we don't do that. Okay, so back to, it seems to be working in the off mode. Awesome. Let's go ahead and set debug options back to true and make sure it still works. Not that way. I'm going to take a drink of water while this explodes. Love it. Okay, and then we can see my target information is changing. Awesome. That's a great suggestion. Thank you for that, Baz. That'll definitely help all those hunters who download this and they're like, why is this slowing me down? We're already asking a lot because we're already asking for every combat entry that comes through, both enemy combat and our own combat, to know that this is happening. And that's a lot of text processing. It would be nice if there were finer grained controls over that, where we could say, tell me about this, but only if it has to do with the decoy. But we don't have that kind of a granularity. We just have to do the processing on our end. Oh, well. Fortunately, it's pretty fast on modern computers, so they have a few cycles to spare. Okay, so we have a working solution. Let's see. Cool, I'm going to set debug options to true, but I don't want to commit that. Okay, so we can see here that we took that suggestion into play, and bam. Okay, only register for target change if needed. Thanks, Baz. Cool. And we'll push those 4 commits out. Again, the sooner it's off of my hard drive only and out into the cloud, the better. Okay. Well, what else are we doing? We're streaming or blazing on through. Okay, the big thing. And you know what? Reorganize the code. We're just going to move that down a little bit because this is the big thing here. It doesn't matter how cool it is that I can move the window around if when I unload and reload the plugin, it's back in the same location. So we want to have a default value for if there is not a save file, and we want a save file. Now we have a question. We have an option here. There's only really one thing. Where is it? And we will eventually have a question of how big is it. We don't have resizing yet, but we will. And so we have the question of, is that per account? Is that per server? Is that per character? And I could see where different hunters that you have might want that to be in different places or different sizes. But I could also see the argument, like the travel window. Its little suitcase icon, I think that's one place per server, which kind of catches me off because I'll move it to a spot with one character, and then I'll switch to the other character where I've got them and another icon backwards, and it throws me because I'm not expecting that to be a per server. I'm expecting it to be a per character. So that's a choice, but we don't have to worry about that choice right now because the data that we're saving and loading is going to be the same no matter where we store it. So we can just dive on in. Now, can we steal from a previous plugin? You betcha. So, first thing, we need some defaults. Now, in Opaque Quest Tracker, we use percentages. How big is it as a percentage of the screen? How far left are we as a percentage of the width? That kind of thing. We have that option. We can also just do an absolute value of pixels. It is 17 pixels from the left. You kind of get to choose for yourself what you prefer. But since we're just going to do a copy-paste job on this one, Opaque Quest Tracker uses percentages, and so shall we. Personally, I kind of like the ease of pixels. But if you're a person who's changing resolutions a bit, percentage is probably going to feel a little bit more friendly. You know, if you have a window, a plugin window that is half the size of the screen, and then you change resolutions to get way bigger, you would probably expect that to stay proportionally big. Or if you change to get a lot smaller, now you don't want that window covering up your whole screen. So I think it's probably a nicer way for someone who's changing resolutions to interact with your plugin. It just adds the extra annoyance of having to deal with decimal numbers. But we have a solution for that, as we saw in the Opaque Quest Tracker. So, okay, let's go ahead and define ourselves a default settings. Now, what do we have? We have the, what did I call it? Oh yeah, Hunter Deadly Decoy window. We'll just call it win. Window. And the window, we know we need left equals something. We know the top equals something. And this is how far are we from the left, how far down are we from the top. We also we have a width and a height. We don't have a current way to change those in the UI, but we know we're going to support them eventually. So we might as well throw them in here. Width equals something. Height, equals something. We don't have any opacity. We don't have colors. We do have locked though. But do we want it to be unlocked ever by default? Do we want them to always come in and say unlock it? With the opacity window, I'm not even sure it made sense. Huh. Sorry, my chat window is scrolling as someone makes a bunch of things. Be gone, party member. Does it make sense to that, or should we always start in a locked position? I think we should always start in locked, so I'm not going to bother persisting that out. If it's unlocked and they log off, I don't care. It's going to be locked when they come back in. I'm okay with that. Not saving lock state at this time. Cool. And we can even document that if we wanted to be nice. Because if we come back in 5 years and we're like, is that still valid? Oh, that was 5 years ago. But that being said, our source control can also tell us when that happened if we try hard enough. Okay, so we have some default values, but we don't actually know what they are yet. So let's go take a look. You know what? That's not helpful. Let's go take a look. Nope. Oh, it's probably not even here, is it? It's probably in the window file. Well, that's easy. Okay, so size. We have a default size of 40 and 48. Neat. But later on, this is getting scaled up by the set size. So first we set the stretch mode, and then we set the size. Now I do want to revisit how that's going to work. But in the meantime, the one thing I wanted to point out is that the size was originally 40 and 48. So 1 by, I don't know. Let's pull up a calculator. 48 divided by 40, 1.2. Awesome. But this is scaling it to 1 by 1. So we should probably fix that to 120 right now, because that's probably why this is looking a little squished right there. So let's go ahead and unload and realize that that's not going to work with these question marks. All right, we'll comment those out for a second. We'll be back. Awesome. Oh, look, that looks so much less squished. That's delightful. In fact, that's so delightful, I'm going to go ahead and commit that to the repository. So let's go ahead and stage that. Retain. What is the word? Proportion? Yeah. Window proportions when scaling. Neat. Now, oops, sorry, my mouse is pressing things. If I were forward-looking, I might think, well, these are going to be changeable by the user. Maybe this should be done by math instead of by hard coding, but we'll come back to that. Okay, so we can come on back and start to get a sense of this. We know that this is ending up currently at 100 and 120. We also know, or can know, what my resolution is. Let's come take a look. Now, it would be 1920 by 1080. It's actually a little bit smaller than that because I'm in windowed mode right now. I think it's more like 1904, but you know, it's close enough for us to tell that 100 divided by 1900, cool, that's like 5.26%. Sounds good. So, width. What does this look like? 0.0526. Okay. We can also do the same thing with height. We know that it's 120, and we know the screen resolution would normally be by 1080. It's smaller than that right now. So we're looking at 120 divided by about 1,000, so about 12%. Oh, my calculator is behind my face. I'm not doing that in my head, you know. But we also know that the width and the height, it could be useful to have those be proportionate. Oh, that's tricky. See, this is why I like pixels. I think the width is the only thing that really matters. We know the height is proportional to the width, so I don't think we're saving the height. I think we have to calculate on the fly based on how many pixels the width turns into and how that scales up. All right, that was good to think about. Also the left and the top. Now the window is currently just setting it to be position 600 and 400. Lovely. Let's go ahead and start with that. Now we don't actually need to be calculating these percentages ahead of time. We can actually just say 600 divided by 1900 and 400 divided by 1000. And we'll get something very similar. Awesome. So we were talking about settings. What we'd like to do is populate from the default settings into our global settings thing. Tillerian's making jokes in chat. To each their own, Tillerian, to each their own. So we want to go ahead and either load from the default settings or from filed, if the file exists and it's parsable and all that good stuff. So we can go ahead and function load settings. But we need to remember to call this function. Now this is almost certainly being called from main. Thanks, Moobot. So we can go ahead and make sure that this is being called. Now, what do we have going on in here? We have the use of the Vindar's patch. So we should go ahead and import that as well. In fact, we're going to need to pull that in, the file as a whole. So if I were to pop out here, go into the opaque quest tracker, find Vindar patch, and then copy it into the hunter of the decoy, we're going to find that very useful for processing the save file data. Okay. So we're in load settings. Awesome. Let's see. We don't need that. Okay. So in fact, we can do some some copy pasting. First, we need that settings data scope. Now this is what I was talking about before. We can use these variables now and define where this is going to be saved. In this case, character sounds great. And then if we change our mind about that later, we can come back in and define it as server or even account. But defaulting to character is fine. And then of course we want to go ahead and have our plugin's name. What are we calling ourselves? Hunter Deadly Decoy. That way if someone's looking at the file, they know exactly what plugin that belongs to. Okay. So with those two variables, we can come in here. Whoopsie. I had an alarm yesterday that I forgot to not have today. So you may have heard my phone going womp in the background. Cool, now that we have that, we can go ahead and load settings in from that location and file name. And we can look at the result of that. It's either going to be a table or it's going to be nil. If it's nil, or anything else really, we don't want to deal with it. If it's a table, then we can go ahead and load. Awesome. Oh, this was, oh, haha. Oh, that's fun. We had a use this as default feature, which could be useful, but I think that was a lot more useful for that particular plugin. So in fact, what we want is this section. No, I forgot that that was there. It's very awesome. Okay, so if we loaded something good, then we can go ahead and say settings equals that. Now, you'll see plugins that do what's called a deep copy of the table that was loaded on into your settings. In this case, I'm being a little lazy. I'm just setting the settings to refer to the loaded settings. But when you're dealing with tables, this is not copying the whole table into a separate space. This is just saying, oh, this this is now pointed at this thing instead of that other thing. And so you can get multiple variables pointing at the same thing, which can cause you some problems. But I think in this case we're pretty safe because we're only going to be referring to the settings in very specific context. But if you see plugins, if you're looking at their code and they're doing a deep copy of a table to another table, that's what's going on. Is it's each element is being copied over, and if there's a table element, then we recurse down into that and copy everything in there over, all the way down until the whole thing's been duplicated. I feel like that's overkill for this right here, until I learn otherwise, and then I'll be very sad. Okay, so the other thing that we saw before is that we need to normalize decimal values. And these, because of some of the inconsistencies between LOTRO clients that are running 32-bit version or 64-bit version in English, French, or German, sometimes those values will be saved with a comma as the radix point, and sometimes they'll be saved with a period as the radix point, the part separating the whole number from the fractional number. And that can get us into trouble because Lua will not parse them correctly until we pre-process them with this Euro normalize function, which is great. Where did that come from? Awesome. We're going to need that function. Now, again, there's a lot of copy paste going on. This is why a lot of people will have a central file. Even if they're not using a library, they'll have a file that they can copy from plugin to plugin that has these things in there. Okay. So we need to go ahead and do settings dot, and then what did we call it? We called it window, and we have left, top, and width. And so we're doing, again, the Euro normalize function, and that's spelled out in more details in a previous stream, and also in some of the blog posts on lifebeyondtheshire.com. So if this is confusing, you can chime up in chat and we can delve into it, but if you're watching this later or just want to keep me on target, you can always follow up with those previous streams. Okay, we have top and we have width. Cool, at this point, these are usable as decimal numbers by Lua. Hooray! We have to remember, anytime we add a new entry here that's going to be saved as a decimal, we have to remember to go ahead and do the same thing down, adding it to this load function here. Otherwise, we're going to crash if those values are decimal numbers in the file, but not in a parsable format. Okay, and then we can choose the default if we couldn't load something. Awesome. Well, that should be enough for us to try to load it in and see what happens. Okay, well, all of our default values were the same as they were before, or they were meant to be, or we are not using them yet. So we should start using them. In fact, we should start using them with maybe some crazy values so we know that it's working. So I think that's the real one, but if left was 0 and if top is also 0, that'll be really obvious what's going on. And finally, the width here, we probably just want to make that much more exaggerated so that we can tell what's going on. Okay. So we'll start with those just as test values, but now we need to make use of these. So where are we using them? We're using them in the Hunter of the Decoy window. So we want to go ahead and maybe sneak a peek at how these are being used here. Okay. Is the window just in here? Oh, neat. Okay. So show us. Excellent. So we get the screen width or the screen height, and we scale these things. That sounds good. So I'm going to just cheat, copy paste how we get the screen width and the screen height, but it's turbine.ui.display, and the get size function. It returns a size 2 tuple with width and height, and we can break that apart. Okay, and then what are we doing? We're just scaling it up by multiplying. Neat. Sounds good. Okay, so we can set position same way. We can go ahead and do settings dot window dot left times screen width. You know that's going to scale off the edge of the window there. So we'll go ahead and do 2 lines. Settings dot window dot top times screen height. Awesome. So, do we think that's correct? One way to find out. Let's go ahead and unload and reload. And that didn't work. Awesome. What did we do wrong? Well, really, I should say, what did I do wrong on that one? Settings dot window. All right. Left and top. Well, always nice to know. Did load settings load? All right. Main's getting called. Load settings is getting called. In load settings, we get something. Settings should be set to something. And in fact, we're almost certain we're getting in here. So we can actually do a turbine.shell.writeLine. No save file found. Well, now I'm just confused. Let's go ahead and comment that out just to double check here. All right, so definitely have a no save file found. So, does settings exist at the time that we include the file? Of course it doesn't. Well, that's definitely going to be a problem. So in main, we go ahead and include that Hunter Deadly Decoy window, but we've done that before we've defined these things. So it doesn't exist at the time that this file is being parsed. Now, how do we fix that? Well, an approach is maybe we should go ahead and have a file where this stuff lives. Now, in a previous project, I've just called that globals, and whoops, we already have a globals. Neat. Let's open that up. Oh yeah, this is where all the health levels lives. You know what? We should also use it to store these. So we're going to go ahead and copy those into globals. We're including that first. In fact, probably want to go ahead and emphasize that we want to include it first. And at that point, we can go ahead and maybe extract some of this other settings related functionality and stick that in there too. That'll maybe make for a cleaner main file here. So the load settings maybe even could go in there. It certainly is tied hand in hand with what's going on here. Okay, well, any chance that'll work? Maybe. Awesome. So we can see our default values were loaded, and in this case, our default said be in the upper left-hand corner, which it is. But not for very much longer. Excellent. Okay, so that was cool. And that's a fun reminder that Lua is parsing these files in completion before moving on to the next one. It finishes the decoy window file, then the strings, and then utils, and then vendor patch. So that maybe tells us that our strings should be parsed a little bit sooner, so that they're readily available. Although in this case, the window wasn't using them. Otherwise, we probably would have had an error thrown earlier. Utils definitely seems like it should be higher up in the order as well. And finally, vendor patch technically is going to be used when the functions and globals are called. So it doesn't need to be in any particular order, since we're not defining global level data there. Okay, well, that was a fun little side trip. My mistake. We weren't actually using those values. It was just defaulting to 0. This is why you shouldn't make your defaults to 0. It just makes it hard to tell that something is happening. Instead, we should go ahead and set 0.5 and 0.5. Excellent. We're still getting the error. This is what we wanted to see, kind of. Okay, so we are seeing a problem attempting to index the field window. Well, let's take a look at that. Globals. Oh, yeah, okay. We are calling the function to create the window well before. Let's fix that. Let's go ahead and draw main window. Let's make a function that will get called definitively after we do all these other things, because that is going to catch us into trouble. We need that setting is loaded up. But what else? That's why I did it. Okay. Well, let's see where else that was used. Okay, those are all being used in functions. I think it is safe to hoist this out and declare the global value here. But I tell you what, a great way to find out if it's legal is to give it a try. Oh, look at that. It's halfway over, halfway down. XK asks, what are your opinions on the new world? Well, that's a very broad question, but if you're asking about Treebeard, the server that I'm on, or Shadowfax, which I haven't tried yet, I actually really like Treebeard. It feels like it's going at the speed that I play the game. So this character is not my main. This character is level 50, but my main is just hit level 36, and we're finishing up North Downs, I think. So we're moving on to the Trollshaws almost certainly, following the epic line to Elrond and Rivendell and tracking down the Black Riders, all of that stuff. And so it feels like at this point I'm not going too slowly for the progress of the game. Knowing that the next expansion doesn't come out for multiple months is really nice. Compared to Ananor, I always felt like it was a rushing. I couldn't enjoy the content. I would try to get to max level, but then the next expansion would come out. It wasn't a good fit for my playstyle. So hopefully that was the question you were asking, but that's my opinions on Treebeard. Okay, let's go ahead and do the size as well while we're at it. Now that we're seeing things working, let's go ahead and we know that the scaled width is here. So local scaled width equals, we want that to be settings dot window dot width times the screen width. And we want the local scaled height to be equal to scaled width times 1.2. And then we can use those right there. Width and height on the size. So if we've done our math correctly, we can go ahead and, oh yeah, look how big that is. That's great. So what we did there is the test data to make sure we knew it was working was set to make the thing about twice as big, I want to say. The width was, yeah, it was 5% before, now it's 10%. Awesome. So if we go ahead and comment out the test data in favor of the real data, not going to delete it in case I need it. Let's come back in, relaunch. Awesome. It's about the same place, about the same size. It's going to be off by a few pixels just on the nature of things, on the nature of decimal numbers and rounding, little errors creep in. Perfect. Okay, so I'm good without those test values. Onyx, yes it is Tuesday. Welcome back to Tuesday. Welcome back to this stream. So we are making good progress on supporting settings. We have the ability to respond to the settings for the Windows left, top, and width. Eventually, we want to go ahead and support changing the width in the UI, but currently it's just in the default settings, and that's okay. Onyx says, I started a plugin with the help of your videos. Oh, that's great to hear. Then I realized what I wanted to make already exists, so I stopped. That can happen. Every once in a while, I'll be a few dozen hours into a plugin project or something, and I'll be like, wait a second, did I check to see if someone's already done this? It's like, wait a second, have I wasted all this time? I don't think it's a waste, though. For one thing, just going through the process, like, it's one thing to watch me localizing this plugin, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's another thing to go ahead and go through the process of hoisting out those strings and looking them up in a lookup table, like doing it yourself hands-on. Each time you do that is going to give you new insights into what you're doing, new thoughts of, oh, I wonder if I could do it like this. Just the exercise of doing it is really important, even if the end result is something that, okay, I didn't need to actually do that. So I would encourage you to not feel like that was a waste of time if you did feel like that. Now, you said you were making one in Factorio, is that right? Onyx says, the process was fun. The frustration I came across was background, a window, and a label. Updating text would not update, but add the text over the previous text. Here's some weird bug someone mentioned. Okay. The background, window, and a label. Interesting. Delirian says, I tend to tweak some plugins just for localization issues or to support features I want the plugin to have. Oh, Onyx says, I was making something like Titan bars only to find out someone made it. Yeah, Titan bars exists, and it's cool, and it supports, if there's a specific feature that you want, like, oh, I really wish it would do X, Y, or Z, the way it's implemented feels kind of modularized. Like, the wallet section of the bar and the things the wallet can do is completely separate from the time, which is completely separate from the inventory. So if there was something like, I don't know, tracking a deadly decoy that you wanted to incorporate into Titan Bar, it seems like kind of a pluggable infrastructure. So don't be afraid to try to add on to Titan Bar with some cool new feature that it's like, I want to track that too, because Titan Bar is great at tracking things. Yeah, Delirian, that's a fine thing to do. Like patching plugins that exist and making them a little bit better, that's awesome. In fact, I have a patch. We're coming up on another treasure event. So I have a patch for the Rich plugin that updates it for the new list of barter items, I think, and a couple other tweaks. So once I get in there on the first day, I'm going to make sure that it's still up to date and then publish a patch for that. Because I meant to, and then the previous one ended, and it was like, well, publishing the update when we're not going to have another treasure event for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, is like, let's just get in there and test it one more time. But the plugin itself is great. I really recommend Rich ! For all of your treasure hunt needs. Okay, so we have the ability to load this from file. What we don't have is saving it to file. So what do we have? Let's see, load settings, we've implemented that, but save settings, we don't. And the important thing about save settings is that by default, plugins tend to save their data when they're unloaded. And that happens either because someone's hit the unload all button in the plugin manager or done the command shortcut / plugin space unload maybe. And excuse me, and when you are logging off your character, by default, all plugins get unloaded. It's as if the unload all button had been hit. And so we want to know when the plugin's being unloaded so we can do that too. But in the spirit of putting like things with like, let's go ahead and register for the unload in our main here. So we can go ahead and, let's see, draw options. Sure, we'll put it right there. Register for unload. Whoops. So we can go ahead and write out unloaded, but we can also call save settings. Now, save settings, I'm going to go ahead and copy paste that and put it into our globals. And that's going to make use of the patch data save. And the same thing, the setting is a data scope, setting is file name, and writing out the current settings. Telegram says, I like the statistics part about Rich and hate it since it shows how low the chances are to get all the mounts. Yeah, I don't know. This is, oh, cool. Exogenesis has chimed in. So the Rich plugins really told me the importance of using the extra items. Dowsing gems if you have to, and the cave claw is a must. So my technique for the treasure, and I did pretty well, and I got all of the things that I was looking to get. And my technique was just wait for the round to start, and the plugin tells you what how long the previous round has been, and if you're in the middle of a reset, wait for it to start. Be in the middle of a bunch of spots, like the top of the hill is good. There's a couple other ones that seem like they have a bunch of spots within the limited range of the cave claw. Release that cave claw, go dig up the thing, and then stop, and then wait. And then wait for the round to reset, and deploy a cave claw, go dig up whatever it says, because it's the best thing around, and you might as well get something, and stop. And doing that, and then doing the repeatable quests as often as you can, and the plugin's great for telling you that, oh, that quest is up, keeps your supply of cave claws up, and keeps your supply of tokens that you can barter for more cave claws, because a cave claw almost always is worth it to deploy early in the round. If you're 5 minutes into a treasure event round, do not deploy that cave claw unless you're desperate. All the good stuff has probably been found, except for the big one. But then again, maybe you'll be finding the big one. So I was pretty successful with that kind of strategy of just overuse the cave claws, because they're worth it. They're worth it. Exogenesis says, don't know how old this comment is, as I was tabbed out. Not too long, actually. But you can update the text properly by setting the visibility to false and then true again. So, Onyx, I hope you are still around and can take that into account on future plugin development. Okay, we were doing a patch data save. The real question is, does that code look good? Now, if I unload this, I didn't see an unload message. That makes me sad. Because I forgot to comment the register for unload. So, Hunter Deadly Decoy unloaded. Awesome. We know the code's being called. And if we pop open our documents, Lord of the Rings Online, plugin data, account, server, and then character, we can see the Hunter Deadly Decoy settings has been written out. And if we pop that open into a text editor, we can see window, left, top, and width. Awesome. Approximately what we asked it for. What is up with left? What did we ask for? Left. We said 600 divided by 1900. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That is not a happy number. Thanks, 19. Lillian says, I think I know how to do it effectively, but Rich shows me you got 78 huge caches and still no cave call mount. Yeah, that one, yeah, it's frustrating to be like, I have 4 of this mount and 3 of this mount and 0 to 1 of the final mount. There's definite disparities in rareness. Totally. I had so many extras of each of the thing and finally got the last one. It's like, ah. Cool. So we can see the data in the file. It's being written out. Now, the only thing we don't have is changing the data that gets written out. And for that, we can go back to the opaque quest tracker, and we can see in the move, the mouse move, when the window is moving, we're going to go ahead and update the settings value there. And in fact, we can lift this right here, left and top. Awesome. So if we go ahead and don't close that, if we come into the mouse move function here, we can go ahead and do the same thing. We can get the current screen width and height from the Turbine UI display by calling get size. And we can go ahead and say that's supposed to be a window because I needlessly changed things. Awesome. And then in this case, we didn't do a sub window. We just are going to call self, get left, self, get top, and we can go ahead and divide out to get the proportion. Okay, well, if we do that and we go ahead and load this, and unlock the window and move it over here on top of the radar and lock it, unload, reload, and unlock it. Sweet. We can see that it appears on top of the radar as expected. Let's go ahead and move it here, lock it, deploy. Sweet. Everything looks great. Thalarian says, at least they finally made the treasure event mounts bind to account and no longer bind to character. So I can release my 5 treasure-laden goats in 3 months. Yeah, I was doing that event on Evernight last time, and I was trying to clear one character's deeds, and so many other characters got cool stuff. Delirian asks, by the way, is there a way to check how long the save routine, and perhaps even the load routine, will need in seconds? Now, the first thing to know is that your plugin lifecycle has 3 basic states: loading, loaded, and running, and then unloading. During loading and unloading, your save and load functions will happen immediately, and things will pause until it happens, and then you get to keep going. And in general, on my laptop, saves are almost instantaneous. Even a few 100,000 characters are pretty fast. When I was writing out megabytes of file data, you would notice a second delay. It does depend, of course, on the speed of your hard drive. But no. Oh, and while your plugin is running, you can issue save and load requests, but you have to provide a callback function, and that callback function won't get called for about 15 seconds. And so while you're running, you can issue a save, you can issue a load. Around 15 seconds later, you'll get called back to say, cool, that was done. But it didn't take 15 seconds to do it. That's just a way of keeping plugins that are running from degrading system performance by constantly reading or writing files, that kind of thing. So the time it takes for the save file to write itself is actually really fast because it's basically serializing a Lua table. So unless your tables are huge, it just doesn't take very long to write them to a file. If you're talking less than 100,000 characters, unless your hard drive is really slow, it's essentially instant. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's pretty much what we have. There's no way to say, hey, if I were to save this table, how long do you think it would be? There's no introspection on that. The best you can do is run some tests on a couple of different machines and get a sense for it. But the reality is, if you need to save it, you need to save it. And unless you're saving a megabyte of data each time you save, it's fine. Cool. Okay. So we have settings. Why did that move? Okay. That wasn't the thing we cared about. We have settings. Although, why would I mention that? I kind of want to take a look at it. Okay, so we can see the top and the left are definitely different than they used to be. The width is still the same because we don't have a way to change that in the plugin options yet. Looks like there's some more talk between Onyx and Exo about the label problem. Awesome. Thank you so much for chiming in for that, Exo. Okay, so we have the to-do item of load settings and save settings done. Cool. So let's go ahead and take a snapshot there. So save load settings, that was the goal. Added load, save/load of settings. Very cool. Now let's just double check what that is. We had a globals file. We went ahead and added the defaults, the setting, what and where we're saving. We have the is_euro format. Again, that gets copied and pasted around from one plugin to another, it feels like, but it's very useful for accounting for different 32 versus 64 in different languages. Okay, we have a load settings, we have a save settings. Awesome, love that. In the window, we use the screen width and screen height to set the left, set the top, set the width, and scale the width because we know right now it's currently a 1.2 to 1 ratio. If that changes because we add more things onto there, we would have to take that into account here as well. And then when we're moving, we go ahead and get the current width and height in case it's changed since the plugin loaded, and use that to scale the left and top. Beautiful. And what's going on in main? We go ahead and we did some rearrangement here. I'll tell you what, we don't need set options to true, but register for unload, got it. Draw main window, got it. And load settings and register for unload. Perfect. And finally, we added in the Vindar patch, which helps save and load files in general. Very useful. Cool, cool, cool. So I was talking about wanting to go ahead and release the plugin because I think it's time to get it into the hands of others. Before I do that, I'm just going to do a final unload, reload, double check, everything still works. Awesome. Now this is what I was talking about earlier. Like I can move this and everything is great, but when I lock the window, it disappears, and I'm not a fan of that. I would like to not disappear if we know it's in the middle, and then it's in this funny, weird state. Not a fan. Bam. Okay, reset. Tillerian says, I just wanted to measure how long specific functions need to run. For instance, the load save routines, but other functions might be measured as well. My approach was remember current time, call function, get the current time, compare that to remember time, but I always seem to get the same time. Yeah, so the get time function, I believe, only has a resolution down to second. So if I say get time and I get 4, 36, and 7 seconds, and then I do a function, and I call the function the get time again, it's still going to be 7 seconds because unless you were really lucky and were milliseconds away from turning over and did a long-running function, the functions that you call are just really, really fast, even saving and loading files. And so without, I don't know if there's like a sleep function that you can access in Lua, but if you just have a super large file, make a Lua file with thousands of entries, and then try to load that, you might see a little bit better. For instance, if you look at the deed tracker plugin, it has some large data files, right? Like this is the English version of it because it's split out because having them all in one file was just too much. But there are almost 4,000 lines here of information about deeds. And altogether, there is 1.5 meg of stuff in there. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, around 1.5 megs. So that file takes a second to load, or at least it takes a few milliseconds to load. So if you have something large like that, throw that at the take the timestamp, load the file, take the timestamp. You'll almost certainly see start to see differences. And if this isn't big enough, make it bigger. But the reality is most of the functions you're calling take way less than a second to run, and so you're not going to see that second precision tick over. I hope that answers the question. Okay. So, reorganizing the code, we did a little bit of that while we were doing the changes today, which is awesome. But I think this is all we needed to do. So I'd like to go ahead and get this thing published. And just in case you haven't seen it or would like a refresher, we'll just do it on stream here, assuming I can make that happen. So let's go ahead and pull up the LOTRO interface site and kind of step through the process. Now, I made a mistake. Well, I have made many mistakes. I made a specific mistake a while back when I was describing uploading a patch, because I used the upload and update to do it, and that was not right. For instance, let's say I wanted to make a patch on the opaque quest tracker, or let's say you wanted to. The upload patch or upload add-on buttons, specifically upload patch, this is where you want to do that. And that will explicitly link your upload as a patch on this one. And so it gets linked here. Yours is treated differently because it's a patch, it's not a plugin, and that's the right way to do it. Now, fortunately, the admins were very kind, and they fixed it for me behind the scenes. And so it wasn't a permanent mistake. But just be aware, there's an under-the-covers difference between a plugin and a patch. Oh, Exo says, I was just about to ask a LOTRO interface question. Somewhat ready to publish a kind of alpha build of my class tools and was wondering what to do about listing dependencies, in this case, drag bar. So, good question. So, first of all, if you have, let me go ahead and go to Hunter Focus. This is not mine, but I recall it having dependencies. So, oh, that's funny. A little bit too wide. Okay. So, if you have dependencies, go ahead and call them out in the description of your plugin. For instance, Hunter Focus has a dependency on drag bar. But in addition to that, if you want to be listed in the LOTRO compendium, then let's go ahead and extract the extraction's happening on my other monitor. Sorry. Let's see. So in the plugin compendium file that you will have, you can list your dependencies on other plugins here. And here, this is just the number. So for instance, if I were to come over here to drag bar, oh, there's probably a link here, isn't there? Yeah. So we can see drag bars is number 367. That's the number being listed in this LOTRO compendium one. Similarly, the turbine files are a special 0 dependency. So if you're depending on the turbine stuff, you can specify dependency of 0 and get that pulled in, even though it's not, there's no 0 entry on LOTRO interface that way. So 2 ways to call out dependencies. Call them out textually, so anyone who's installing your plugin manually knows about them, and call them out programmatically in your plugin compendium file, so that plugin compendium can look at that, automatically install drag bars if it's not there, and then install yours. Hopefully that answers the question. Cool. So this is a plugin though, so we're going to go ahead and go to the upload and update. Now this is a new interface or add-on, and it's a LOTRO one, so it's a standalone plugin. And then we just have to sort of say, is it a Hunter? Yeah, it's definitely Hunter. Now we can double check this if we're not sure. We can go ahead and come into downloads, and under downloads we can kind of take a look. So class specific, we would come in Hunter, scripts intended primarily for the Hunter class. Well, Deadly Decoy definitely fits the bill. And we can see under that Barrage Timer, Hunter Focus Passage. Awesome. There's not enough Hunter plugins. Let's make one. So we've gotten the right category. Now we need a zip file. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and make one. Now, as I think Laura pointed out last time, if you're using the LOTRO interface SVN for your source control, there is deployment from there. But I am not doing that, so I'm going to do this a little bit more manually. So, first of all, I'm going to stage my upload separately just so I can double check what's going on. Whoops. Sorry about that. So, we're going to go ahead and, oh, you know, we'll go to documents instead. Plugin long releases. We'll go ahead and make a new one. And this is kind of the last chance if we wanted to change the name of the plugin. So the plugin we called Hunter Deadly Decoy. Now the problem with that name is this does work on a normal decoy, but if you're a yellow line hunter, you upgrade to Deadly Decoy after 5 points. So you specialize at 6, and then 10 levels later, you have gotten an upgrade to Deadly Decoy. So the emphasis was on the deadly part of it, but it does work pretty nicely for the regular decoy, especially for telling you how much health it has left. So I was debating, like, do I call it Deadly Decoy and kind of, you know, is that regular decoy erasure? Or should I rename this to Hunter Decoy and kind of de-emphasize the deadly part of it? Or are we making the decoy more deadly by using the plugin? Like, naming things is hard. But renaming it is also annoying at this point, so we're just going to go with it. Okay, so that's the name, Hunter Deadly Decoy. Great, Hunter Deadly Decoy version 1.0.0. Great. Now, in here, we want to go ahead and have a cube plugins. And that's going to match over here. And then finally, we can go ahead and Hunter Deadly Decoy. Yep, copy that. And, whoops. And the Hunter Deadly Decoy folder. But we don't actually want all that, or I don't, I should say. I don't want the to-do, I don't want that Excel file, and tell you what, in main, I also don't want show debug options to be true. Now, we could either have it be false or possibly not there at all, but we'll just set it to false. Let's see, the README, oh, you know, I don't think we actually finished filling out that README file. Let's go ahead and do that real fast. Version 1.0. All right. Decoy icon appears when decoy is deployed. Icon shows remaining time and remaining health of decoy. Decoy icon can be dragged by unchecking lock the window in place in options. That's probably enough for a to-do. Let's see. Exo says, "Ooh, need to make a final decision on my plugin name." The work in progress name was class or auras, but it occurred to me that it shares the CA abbreviation. Which one is CA? I'm not remembering off the top of my head. I found that same. I don't know if it was necessarily bad, but daily tasks is a seminal plugin. It's amazing, right? And when I was making deed tracker, it's like, well, I don't know what else to call this thing, so it's also going to be /dt, but I'm not going to collide with their chat commands. So instead it's /deed or /deeds, and /gt is just not going to be a thing. Common analysis, of course. So sometimes you just have to bite the bullet because it was like, well, this thing is deed tracker. It tracks deeds. I got nothing. And sometimes you can be like, oh, okay, I can play around with this enough. We haven't even done any chat commands here because there's just, what is there to do? It opens, it closes. Okay. I don't have much else. In a proper README file, and I'll probably expand on this in future versions, credits, if you're getting inspiration from anyone else, if you have a little story you want to tell, you can put whatever you want into the do file besides a version history. But definitely, if you have inspiration on how you did specific techniques, it's nice to thank the authors that gave you that inspiration. So, if Thurlor's or Reminders plugin made me think of, oh, I should totally do that X, Y, and Z, sure, throw it in there. Props to those people who inspire us. But in the meantime, that's a perfectly fine README file. Okay. Well, I meant to open those two. Okay, so I'm going to use a comparison tool to double check that these are matching enough. Now, I like to use Beyond Compare, but whatever folder and file level comparison tool you like, that's fine. We can see the Excel file is not there and the to-do file is not there. Awesome. In main, we can see show debug options is toggled. And the README file, we actually want all of this. Very cool. Awesome. So everything's good. And so for the release, we want to go ahead and pop back up into the releases folder. We're going to make a zip file. And it's going to have the same name, 100 Deadly Decoy .zip. And then we want the cube plugins to be the first thing in there. So I'm just going to drag that over. It could be really easy to mess up the folder structure by going up one level or down one level. But like the Hunter focus here, it's the horror plugins because that was a patch. The opaque quest tracker would come in. First thing we see is cube plugins. So for the Hunter Deadly Decoy, same thing. We want to come in here, and the first thing we see, cube plugins. Awesome. The structure is correct. Cool. Okay, so choose file. Can do. Hunter Deadly Decoy. Bam. Attach images. Ah, cool. We should totally have an image. Now, one thing that I like to do is use the built-in snipping tool to take screenshots instead of pressing the screenshot key. This lets me grab all of the pixels and they don't get JPEG compressed. So make sure we're in rectangular snip mode. Now, unfortunately, because of the way it freezes the frame, you don't get to see it in action. But when I press the new button, it'll freeze everything on the screen, allow me to draw a rectangle on there, and then it saves off those pixels. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and launch this and do 1500 damage on it and do a new snip. Awesome. So as we can see, it went ahead and grabbed it in the process of ticking down. It might be nice to go ahead and grab one with it pretty full. So let me go ahead and save this into Documents, and then Lord of the Rings, plugins, cube plugins, Hunter Deadly Decoy, and we'll go ahead and make a website folder, which is just my convention for things that are going on a website or forums or a LOTRO interface, that kind of thing. So we'll go ahead and call this Deadly Decoy 2 version version 1.0.0.png. And I call it 2 because I know I want a 1 here. So I go ahead and deploy a dummy decoy and then immediately take a snapshot. It'll be pretty full. Awesome. And I put the version on it because future versions may change the look and feel, and this lets me keep kind of a historical record. Oh, Little Red Hat has asked, what does your plugin do, XO? And XO has replied, basically it redesigns buff/debuff tracking and redesigns quick slots to make all relevant combo information clear. Well, that sounds amazing. One of the things I have trouble with is the mini raid plugin doesn't seem to show me dispellable debuffs as routinely as I would like it to, and I think there's some tuning that can be done in there, and I just haven't gotten into that. But a better, more robust way of knowing who's debuffed with what and how to get rid of it, if I'm reading right, that sounds really cool, and I would like to try that. Okay, so we have some screenshots. We'll come back in to the upload, and we'll go ahead and manage images. Now, manage images pops open a new window. It's totally fine. Choose the file. Cool. We're going to come in here to Documents, Overlays, Plugins, Cube Plugins, under the Decoy website, and we're going to go ahead and upload images 1 and 2. Decoy has just been summoned. Okay, and choose file 2. Decoy is running out of health faster than time. Sure, why not? Now, it always worries me a little bit, but I just close window. You can click Manage Image, it pops it open, and you can see they're still there. It just feels a little weird. I'm overly cautious. It always works. Every time it works just fine. Okay, so what's the name of this thing? Hunter Deadly Decoy. Spell that correctly. File version 1.0.0. Description. Ugh. Yeah, typing things is hard. But what I will say is whatever I type there, it's going to share some similarities with other things that I've done. Now, if you get, let's see, opaque. If you've already done an interface, you can always come here and hit the edit button to get not only the text, but also the markup that's doing this cool blue stuff, for instance. So if we come in here, edit, I can go ahead and copy all of this and start playing around with it to change it. Now, of course, we're going to go ahead and save in the website. Oh, I have a naming convention, but I forget what it is. So we'll come in here, LOTRO interface. Oh, image captions, I forgot about that. Description, there we go. Hunter Deadly Decoy website, and then this is the description version 1.0. Great. So introduction, gotta rename this thing. So Hunter Deadly Decoy is pops up a window showing remaining time and health for your decoy and deadly decoy. For your yellow line, decoy and deadly decoy. Oh, we could have taken a little screenshot of the options window as well. Use options, lock the uncheck options, lock the window in place to move the window. Yeah, good enough. In the options screen, uncheck. There we go. I know. All right, installation. Unzip the archive, you'll get a thing, move it there. Load the plugin, all this is the same, excellent. When it opens, find Hunter Deadly Decoy on the list on the left. Click load. If you'd like the plugin to load automatically, ... No issues, none. Actually, yeah, no. That's not a good place for future features. All right, revision history. So, what are we? We're in September. Version 1 initial release. There we go. Cool. So, we have basic text for the website. Awesome. Allow updates and add-ons. Do you want to allow other authors to submit optional patches and add-ons for your interface? Goodness, yes, I do. Patches will not change your main download. It will only show those files other people submit for your interface. Yeah, I submitted an update recently for something, but the author had said no to this. So it couldn't be linked automatically. And, you know, I can't remember what it was. Was it Social Guy? Yep. No, it was not, because that one is linked. All right, it was a different one. Was it Hunter Focus? Yeah, okay. You know, I should probably just look at the list of my interfaces. Oh, was it Bootstrap? It was Bootstrap, yeah. So Bootstrap plugin manager, you'll see there's no patch thing up here. They had checked no. And so if you search for Bootstrap, you'll come up with plugin manager version 1.4 reload button fix, but it doesn't link it automatically. Exo says, would be nice if dependencies could get listed like that too. Yeah, that could be interesting. I wonder how extensible the system is. But there is that convention now for just listing it in your description to abide by. But yeah, something a little bit more built into the structure seems like it'd be cool. Okay, so... but yes, I definitely want people to be able to patch on it. One of the cool things is when people patch on it, you can go ahead and kind of roll that into future releases so that the patch kind of just gets, with the patch author's permission, kind of gets rolled into the into the plugin as part of the base install so that people don't have to install both of them. All right, cool. I have read, understand, and agree to all these terms. Excellent. Name things. Oh, cool. Well, thanks for showing a video, or trying to. Sorry, I'm distracted looking at this image. Okay. It's unobjectionable. I'm going to share it with everyone if you don't mind. What? Yeah, but now I'm looking at it. There's some cool stuff going on here. Hey, how did you manually do the glowy box thing around? Was that your own thing, or was there a built-in ability to do that? Yeah, sorry, I just hit the... That's manual? That's so cool. Are you just doing that in the update loop, and you just kind of figure out how many seconds or fractions of a step? Oh, it's a single image. Oh, interesting. Okay, I want to pull it up again. Oh, okay. Huh, that's sweet. Awesome, nice. Okay, anyway, yes, if you haven't read the rules and guidelines, if you haven't read these, you should always read through it at least once. I feel confident that I don't have any spyware in there and that it conforms to et cetera, et cetera. But do read through those at least once and be confident what's going on. Cool, your file was successfully uploaded. Now, there is a 0 to infinity amount of time that can pass between hitting the upload button and it showing up on the list of files. So, for instance, if I come here to the home page and go to list my interfaces, we can see that the Hunter Deadly Decoy is pending. Now, usually this doesn't take too long, but there could be human overview on it, and so if it seems to take hours or days for your plugin to go from pending to published, that's just part of the process. That allows them to do manual oversight if they want to. They may not. It's up to them. But every once in a while, I'll just sit here hitting refresh and like, is it there yet? Is it there yet? No, it might actually be there. Okay, cool. We're coming up in the hour here. What I haven't done is I haven't publicized this on the LOTRO forums. I should probably do that. And I haven't asked for this to be included in the LOTRO compendium. Now, I might do both of those here right after I log off because I think it'd be cool if people knew this existed. But I also know there's a bunch of little niceties that I want to roll in here, so maybe I don't get too many people looking at this quite yet, and that's okay too. Anyhow, Hunter Deadly Decoy, it's available for downloading now, so if you are a hunter and you like decoys, give it a shot. And then we'll maybe have one more stream where we kind of refine some of the things going on here. Oh, thanks, Little Redhead. We might do another stream just kind of revising some of the things. We have a bunch of things in the to-do list. I know Little Redhead would be delighted if there was some sort of number ticking down. And I want to address some of the scaling issues too. And not scale everything, just the image. So in the meantime, the week after that, or sometime soon in the future, it might be time to move on to something new, either a new thing we're developing or maybe a plugin that we're fixing. If Treasure is happening, we might look at the Rich plugin and see what the changes are there. Let's pull up the LOTRO event. So if you search your favorite search engine for LOTRO event schedule, you'll get this post that keeps getting updated. Is it events? Okay, we can see the next buried treasure event. Man, I keep forgetting. I need to go do Baggins' birthday on multiple servers because there's a deed for that. Buried treasure event. That is going to be the 30th through the 5th, which ends the day before my stream. I may have to do one on my personal stream just to cover what's going on there because I think it's interesting how to go in and change an existing plugin. That's at least as interesting as making your own. So anyway. If I end up doing a little special one for that, I'll tweet about it and put it into Discord servers and whatnot. But otherwise, I hope to see you next week where we possibly pick up where we left off. So if there's any last minute questions or comments, throw those into chat here, and otherwise we'll wrap up. Okay. Well, cool. Exo, thanks for sharing a little preview of what you're working on. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. And thank you, everyone, for contributing in chat and chatting amongst yourself as well as asking questions. I really do appreciate that it doesn't feel like I'm just shouting into the void here. And I hope you get some sort of enjoyment or information out of being here with me. That being said, I think that's everything we're going to cover today. So thank you again for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. And I do hope to see you next week. Until then, keep plugging along. Bye-bye now.